A reading from 2 Kings. Now the wife of a member of the company of prophets cried to Elijah, "Your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that your servant feared the Lord. But a creditor has come to take my 2 children as slaves." Elijah said to her, "What shall I do for you? Tell me, what do you have in the house?" She answered, "Your servant has nothing in the house except a jar of oil." He said, "Go outside, borrow vessels from all your neighbors, empty vessels, and not just a few. Then go in, shut the door behind you and your children, and start pouring into all these vessels. When each is full, set it aside." So she left him and shut the door behind her and her children. They kept bringing vessels to her, and she kept pouring. When the vessels were full, she said to her son, "Bring me another vessel." But he said to her, "There are no more." Then the oil stopped flowing. She came and told the man of God, and he said, "Go sell the oil and pay your debts, and you and your children can live on the rest." This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. You may be seated.
I'd like to thank our day camp team. You could not have had a better skit for bad math, God's generous economy. And I'd also like to thank the choir for showing up. They're off this summer, okay? Look at that. We have a full choir and they are off. I'll pay you later. It's satisfying when everything adds up. When 1 + 1 = 2, when there's a job well done, when your checkbook balances, when the church's checkbook balances, thanks to you, it's worth the effort. Once in a while, even cleaning is that way. Now, I'm not sure anyone really enjoys cleaning, but I know for me, there are certain jobs that I really don't mind. I don't mind loading the washer and starting the clothes. I don't mind loading the dishwasher and starting it, and vacuuming. It's so satisfying. And even as hard as it is to get out there in the heat to mow the yard, these are jobs that I really don't mind. Now, why these and not others? I do not like folding laundry and putting it away. I do not like unloading the dishwasher. Thankfully, one of my daughters does, and it's a perfect trade-off. She likes unloading it because it's clean and it's not yucky. So it works out well. But these tasks, the ones I said I don't mind so much, they have a payoff, right? It's so satisfying to look at a vacuumed carpet, to look at a mowed lawn, a sink empty of dirty dishes. What you get out is worth what you put in. It adds up. But most of life doesn't add up. Your house doesn't stay clean for very long. You work hard, but you still don't have enough. You might have grown up with faith, but then you have doubts. Bad things happen to good people. Good people do bad things. Each of us has our own story. But if good math is 2 + 2 = 4, God's math is bad math. Because God's math creates abundance out of nothing. I want to share now something of an extended reading from one of my favorite books, The Cloister Walk by Kathleen Norris. She's talking about what happens when she comes into schools as a visiting poet. Because poetry, like life, like faith, like God, doesn't add up. There are no prescriptions, no set of rules that will produce a soulful poem. First of all, before I ask students to write, we always have a long discussion about the rules. And then she goes on, to describe how she explains to kids how they can break all of the normal rules of their classroom. They can work together, they can share answers, they can write in the margins, they don't have to look up how to spell all the words. And evidently a big thing in 3rd grade, they can write in manuscript or cursive. She goes on. We talk about the ways that this kind of writing differs from learning spelling or math, where there are right and wrong answers. I tell the kids that in doing what we'll be doing, there is no one right answer, not even a right or wrong way to do it. And if in a particular writing assignment, I do suggest some rules to follow, I always say, if you can think of a way to break these rules and still come up with a good poem, go right ahead. Often when I'm working in an elementary classroom, my mind pitches back to my own school days. I enjoyed school wholeheartedly until 3rd grade, until we moved from adding and subtracting to multiplying and dividing. I had my first taste of failure. I'd grown used to counting on my fingers, and I panicked when the numbers became so big, so fast, literally untouchable. One day, in exasperation at some muddle I'd made with a math problem on the blackboard, an experience that always terrified me, my teacher grabbed my chalk, solved the problem, and said in a sarcastic voice, now let's pause here for just a moment. Haven't we all had that moment? Awkward, tentative, standing at the chalkboard, everyone, all eyes are on you. For me, that happened when I was about 7 years old. I was in my first swimming lesson, and the teacher said, who knows how to blow bubbles? I raised my hand. And she said, okay, well, let's blow bubbles. All the other kids put their face in the water, and I started blowing spit bubbles. It's amazing that I ever learned to swim after that. So there she is at the chalkboard. We can all feel it. The teacher says, you see, it's simple. Simple as 2 + 2 is always 4. And without thinking, I said, that can't be. Norris doesn't expand on how well that went over with the teacher. She goes on to say, I was sure that 2 + 2 could not possibly always be 4. And of course it isn't. In Boolean algebra, 2 + 2 can be 0. In base 3, 2 + 2 is 11. I had stumbled onto a truth about numbers that I had no language for. End quote. Some of the most wonderful and beautiful things just don't add up. Poetry, love, beauty, faith. God's economy doesn't add up, but it works in our favor. God creates everything out of nothing. God takes the dust of the earth and breathes holiness into it to create us. God creates blessing in unexpected places. God uses the people that are least valued by the world to become the greatest heroes. Jesus says the first will be last and the last shall be first. Those who lose their life will gain it. God doesn't even try to play by the world's rules. Now, mathematicians, math whizzes, math teachers, please forgive me. I honor your gifts. I bow to them, actually. But God's math is its own reality. Norris talks about the connection between poetry and breaking the rules and faith. She says a poem is not made of ideas, but of words. And faith also expresses itself through that which is lived, breathed, uttered, left silent. A process, not a product. To make the poem of our faith We must learn not to settle for a false certitude, but to embrace ambiguity and mystery. We see God's math in the life of Jesus, right? The life of one man given for the sins of millions throughout the generations. But it's been this way since the beginning. It didn't start with Jesus. We see this in the story of the prophet Elisha. Elisha was a student of the great prophet Elijah. And when Elijah was being taken up to heaven, Elisha begged him not to go. It was a huge loss. He was losing his mentor, the person that he admired, that he loved. It was a negative. It was a subtraction. But as Elijah went, Elijah asked, "Give me a double portion of your spirit." It was an abundance, a plus. And Elisha shared that abundance everywhere he went. We could do this whole sermon series just on Elisha. He creates abundance everywhere. He purifies bad water. In Israel, water was life. He fills the dry land with water. He helps the Israelites defeat the Moabites. In a famine in Gilgal, he cleansed a pot of tainted stew so the people could safely be fed. Then he multiplies 20 loaves to serve hundreds of people with some left over, a familiar story. Now, Elisha is no pushover. Once, some kids tease him, calling him Baldy. This is a real story in the Bible. Now, this touches a place for you. In my family, bald is beautiful. Can I get an amen? Uh-huh. My dad, whose 80th birthday we just celebrated yesterday, has been bald my whole life. So I particularly love what happens next. I love what Elisha does here. Elisha curses these hooligans, and 2 bears come and eat 40 of them. Don't mess with this prophet. Bald is beautiful. Hard stop. Then there's this widow. The widow of one of Elijah's fellow prophets who had died. And she comes to him desperate. In ancient Israel, if you couldn't pay your debt, creditors could come and take your sons. Without a husband or son, she would have no way to make a living, and she would likely die. The debt had to be paid. It has to add up. It's the world's math. To the one who feels she has nothing and that what she has is about to be taken away, Elisha says a strange thing. He says, "What do you have?" And then he tells her to take the little bit of oil that she has and then to go get jars from her neighbor. Why? She had to act boldly, asking for more when she had nothing. It doesn't add up. It doesn't make sense. "Give me your jars." I can only imagine she was nearly in a panic, wondering if the creditors were right behind her, rushed, harried, afraid. Why would her neighbors share their jars? It doesn't make sense. But they shared, and she filled, and there was enough. Friends, what is God saying to you today that doesn't add up? Are you the widow, feeling desperate at your losses, backed into a corner, not knowing what will come next? A lot of us are feeling this way in our world right now. Are you the widow's neighbor? Someone beside you is in need, asking for something. Maybe it's obvious how that fits their need, and maybe it's not so obvious. Maybe it surprises you. Maybe it's not making much sense. Maybe you have experienced or witnessed a miracle. You have known a time when God took a little bit or even nothing and created abundance. All of us have something that we need. And we all have something that we can give. When life doesn't add up and leaves us lacking, empty, or in need, God's economy kicks in. It doesn't add up in traditional ways either, because it is abundance from nothing, grace when we need it most, our once empty cups flowing over.